anyone's sent a question in not here, I'll read that question out. We've got a few sent through in advance. What we want to do is ask our representatives how they're going to be supporting the voluntary sector in Merton for the next 4 years. That's how up to date I am with the political process. What I want to ask, please, is if we can keep it to Merton and the voluntary sector. If you're like me, you've probably got lots of other political questions you'd like to ask these people. And I try. I see them as I like to, and I try, and they're very good at not answering them. If it's not the right time, they will answer at the right time. So let's keep it. We've got an hour and a half or so to think about Merton and the voluntary sector. So can we do that? I'm also going to ask that we keep the questions brief. As chair, I'll help our politicians keep the answers brief and to the point, and that there's no follow-up questions. Unfortunately, we're not really going to have time for a dialogue around any one single point this evening. The other is to get a snapshot of how each of the parties feel about these issues, what they're saying about these issues, and then we can form our opinions around that. Does that make sense? Is that okay? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, can I just ask you, I thought this was a Hustings, rather we could ask any old question you like.
You can, but the theme of the Hustings is particularly around, because we're in MVSC, is particularly around the voluntary sector in Merton. If we get through all those questions, you can throw something else out. But the voluntary sector is fairly broad, so maybe you can readjust your questions to fit into that category. Okay? But we'll see how we get on. Yeah, sorry for the misunderstanding there. It's not helpful. Okay, and we're going to start with opening remarks from each of our lovely people, and they'll introduce themselves. But to keep it fair, we're going to do it in a semi-random order. So I've got numbers 1 to 5 written on pieces of paper. So hang on a minute. I'm going to pick someone I don't know. If they happen to be part of your party support group, then it's not my fault. Okay, I'm going to start with number 3. And I walked away from my sheet. Oh! Yes, me. I was going to put myself down. Number 1. That's Oonagh. Thank you. Yeah. I know I'm going to forget all of this, isn't it? Number 2's third. I'm getting confused. It's you? So you'll be going third? Okay. Number 4. Number 9. 4 is 4. Which means 5 is 5. Correct. So I'll explain that when I sit down. So, Labour group will go first, followed by the Conservative group, followed by the Greens, the Lib Dems, and last but by no means least, the Merton Party Independents. Okay, 3 minutes each. I've got a timer. I feel like being really strict. I'm being told by more experienced people to be a bit chill, so off we go.
Thank you very much. Thank you to MVSC for putting on these hustings. It's very welcomed. I'll just say a few words about the Labour Party's approach, both as a party here in Merton and as the council since 2010 on the voluntary sector. But I wanted to start with our libraries. That is very much voluntary-led, and it showed 100% of the residents were satisfied with the services, and these are benchmarked and made Merton the best performing in London, our libraries. And as you know, we have not closed libraries, we have not shut them down or made them smaller or cut the hours. We've actually opened a brand new library in Collier's Wood, designed with Alzheimer's Society, so it's a dementia-friendly library. Libraries Task Force recognising innovative libraries, and they're holding a meeting later this year at Collieswood Library, the brand new library. And the voluntary sector we need to thank as a council and as the Labour Party. Over 600 people volunteer at our libraries, and we advise on library volunteering to other boroughs as well. And recently recognised our library volunteers at an awards ceremony. One of the issues that we care deeply about is delayed transfer of care records. The discharge, people in hospital are being discharged on time. After great work done since the summer of 2017, we are now the best performing London borough for transfer of care, apart from the City of London, where obviously not many people live in the City of London, quite a small number. Everybody was transferred within 6 weeks last year, often a difficult experience for relatives, and we got a letter from the Chief Executive of St George's, sends a letter of recognition of our excellent partnership working, and recognition from government of enormous improvements made London-wide. Very important that people are discharged from hospital on time, and with care, and with the knowledge of their residents, and with our re-ablement team. I think schools are very important, and especially special schools. Cricket Green Ofsted inspected in November 17 and judged outstanding with a head teacher who displays inspirational leadership. I want to thank the teachers, the governors, the pupils, their parents, and our schools improvement team here in the London Borough of Merton. Per se, Ofsted inspected 15% judged outstanding, and they centre of excellence. And Melrose, Ofsted inspected 14 judged good, with almost every student getting GCSEs or other qualifications. Money spent on adult social care. There is £9 million going towards adult social care in 2018-19, and that is an investment by the London Borough of Merton, despite the national crisis caused by the Tory government in adult social care. We are putting money into adult social care, and we have increased the council tax by 3%, and all that money goes to adult social care. This council, this Labour council, will not sit back and watch vulnerable people go without, and so the £9 million invested, plus the 3%, all going to adult social care.
That's your time.
Time, okay, thank you. Just wanted to add the voluntary sector organisations, over 9.5 billion allocated in 17-18 to 83 organisations and groups in voluntary funding. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
First, I would start by thanking Kaduru and Gerry and the MBSC for the invitation to attend the Hustings tonight. And my thanks to you all for coming along to hear us, a bunch of politicians, and I know many of you working hard across Merton. So I'd like to thank you for coming along. Firstly, myself, I've lived in Merton for the last 25 years, and it's been quite a journey. So I've started off working full-time as a young professional, commuting into our wonderful city, and then working as a full-time mum of 3 boys, and I've also had my mum in a local care home. So I have used and seen firsthand many of our council services, and also appreciated and worked with our amazing voluntary sector. I've been a councillor for nearly 16 years, and I'm proud to represent my community and this borough, and to lead my group. And I hope that we'll have the chance after May the 3rd to really work with you and continue to work for all that we can feel really proud of. Because we've been working to that end since I took on the leadership of the group, and we've been working with a really amazing groups of people right across the borough, from Merton Sill, BME Voice, HUK, Care Support Merton, which has a special in my heart, the Dementia Hub, Wimbledon Guild, Merton Citizens. I mean, I could read out a very long list of residents groups, which I won't, and faith groups, conservation, friends groups, and of course volunteers that take part really almost daily in all sorts of capacities. We were always keen to engage with groups as part of the work in the community, with hands-on approaches, including the spring clean, the Wandle clean-up, a tree and flower planting, and so on. And we really like the way that Merton Volunteer Group support those, try to encourage volunteers, we've built up and run a very strong and local campaign on issues that we know matter locally to people. Obviously, rubbish is an area which we know is really important, and really important for all those here tonight. The closure of the police station in Wimbledon is an important thing, and something which we pledge to try to purchase. We know that there is sufficient funds in the Merton Council coffers, and we believe that can provide a good return, not just to the council, but also for the police and our community, because with some imagination, actually that can be used in all sorts of extra ways. The same could be said on the Merton Hall issue and other heritage sites across, and indeed a lot of the community portfolio. That's time. I'd love to talk to you more on all sorts of ranges of issues, but maybe some of them will come up in the questions, because there's a lot more that we all want to be doing right now. Working in partnership is a really important thing. So thank you. And I think it's the lady.
I'm not very experienced with the microphone, is that okay?
Yes.
Don't you just hold on to it. Don't have it too close to your mouth. Don't have it too close to your mouth. That's all I would say.
Okay, good evening everybody. Thank you very much to MVSC for taking an active role in the democratic process by organising this event and extending its invitation to the Green Party. And thanks very much to all of you for taking the time to be here. I am Merton Green Party's election agent and St Helier Ward candidate, a state secondary school teacher of 13 years before completing a master's and a doctoral thesis, whilst working as a university visiting tutor and caring for my father. Merton Green Party would like to take this opportunity to pay tribute to Merton's astounding number of volunteers. One look at MVSC's website reveals just how vast the network is and demonstrates that volunteers are integral to the well-being of our community. As detailed in our policy on workers' rights and employment, the Green Party recognises the social value of volunteering and believes that volunteers should be treated with respect and value for their contribution. Indeed, many Merton Green Party members are volunteers themselves, involved with, for example, Clean Air Merton, Merton Centre for Independent Living, Merton Cycling Campaign, the Scouts, Sustainable Merton, Wimbledon Windmilers. I could go on, as well as litter picking on the last Sunday of every month in Wandle Park. Importantly, though, the Green Party is concerned that voluntary work is clearly essential to the survival of the wider economy, yet unacknowledged by conventional economic practice and theory and practice, and that organisations should not replace paid employees with volunteers. Moreover, we feel strongly that the impact of so-called austerity measures are proving catastrophic for the third sector, with severe funding cuts for public services, too often dressed up as quote-unquote efficiency savings, increasing our reliance upon volunteers, but affecting their ability to deliver effectively. Underfunding our NHS, our education system, our emergency services, our councils, shows reckless disregard for our welfare, and is felt here in Merton by various volunteer-run organisations who are forced to scale back or close, by disabled people seeing the depletion of their care support packages, those concerned about the Epsom and St Helier Trust proposal to concentrate acute services on one site, and on it goes. Naturally, there is much more to say. Our mini manifesto, for instance, focuses upon cleaning up mucky Merton, the need for affordable housing, the need for air that's safer to breathe, and safer streets for everyone. In addition, we have significant concerns about the outsourcing of the management of our green spaces to ID Verdi, waste management to Veolia, and the management of housing in certain parts of the borough to Clarion and the like. However, I fear my time is up, so thank you for listening, and I look forward to your questions.
My name is Kohler. I'd like to thank Merton Voluntary Service Council for putting on these hustings and for you for coming. Voluntary and community sector is critical to the health and well-being of any society. Never more so than now. Neither the Tory nor Labour Party fighting what looks like a hard Brexit, the damage that will do to businesses, public services and, of course, critically, the third sector. The community is, of course, central to liberal democratic philosophy. And the Merton Lib Dems are committed to introducing a more open and transparent form of governance that puts community at the centre of the difficult decisions that must be made. And those decisions are difficult. I'm not one of those politicians sitting here telling you all my opponents are fools and I have all the answers. I don't. I do, however, think that we need to talk more. What I'm arguing for is a critical position where we talk and don't always preach to you, where we talk together and we listen to you. At the recent Merton Centre for Independent Living, John spoke to us when he told us what you really need, or how can we help you? And John said, listen to us. Make consultation a creative process. Don't make it a tick box exercise. There's a better way of running things, and part of it is us listening to you. Think of the local issues besetting my community. Viola contract, the transfer of Merton Hall to Ellen Church, the closure of Wimbledon Police Station. What marks all of those out is a failure to consult properly, to communicate, to discuss the issue before it became a problem. But we need your help to make that change. Currently there's only one Lib Dem councillor in Merton. It's not enough. When Councillor Jeans, after talking to members of the community, proposed ring-fencing the Independent Living Fund, transition monies, not one councillor, neither Tory nor Labour, supported her amendment. Similarly, when a Lib Dem motion to make sure that all members, all workers in adult care got the living wage, it was again scuppered by a Lib and Tory. Neither of them would support the motion. It's a very big thing about the cosy duopoly running Merton at the moment. But we, the Greens, the Lib Dems and the residents weren't even invited to this event initially, till we complained. It would have been just the usual fight between Labour and Tory. I'm saying to you, I humbly submit that Merton, and in particular its voluntary sector, needs strong, independent and listening Lib Dem presence. The Council Chamber needs other voices. It needs some transparency. It needs some new ideas. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Peter Southgate. I'm the leader of the Merton Park Independents. Let me put my cards on the table straight away, can I? The Merton Park Independents, we are a one-ward party. We have no ambitions to grow. As such, our chances of forming the next administration are, in fact, close to zero. Okay? So, unless, of course, we find ourselves in the position again of holding the balance of power, as we did in 2006 and 2010. Therefore, I'm not going to make promises to you that I won't be in a position to keep. Instead, I'm going to talk about the role of the Overview and Scrutiny Commission in supporting the voluntary sector in Merton. Now, I've chaired the Commission for 12 years. It's the role, in fact, I found I wanted when we had the balance of power. When austerity made its appearance with the coalition government in 2010, it became apparent to me that the voluntary sector was going to be key in holding together the fabric of our civic society as the third partner along with the council and the residents. I've been a trustee of the Moulton Guild since I became a council, and I do have first-hand experience of what a difference the Guild can make to the lives of the elderly and often isolated people. In 2012, I chaired a scrutiny review of volunteering in Merton, and that was based on the premise that, and I quote, volunteering is worth supporting because it helps to build the type of society we want to see in Merton. And the review was inspired, in fact, by the success of volunteering in our libraries, something the leaders already mentioned. Initially, the library service was looking for 144 volunteers. They actually attracted 512. So that's become a terrific Merton success story. We wanted to see if it could be replicated elsewhere. One of the first things we discovered, it shouldn't have been a surprise to me, but in some ways it was that the benefits of volunteering accrue as much to the volunteers as they do to those they help and the local community. So we made up recommendations in our review to help volunteers improve their own employability skills, to recognise their contributions in an annual awards ceremony, to see if they could benefit from discounts on council leisure facilities, just in the way staff do. And we recommended that the council should work with MVSC to identify funding streams and encourage smaller groups to forge links through Merton Connected. But most important, we recommended that the Commission should have an ongoing responsibility for MVSC in the voluntary sector, and this we've continued to do with annual updates on Merton's volunteering strategy.
Bonus points for not using your 3 minutes. So that's the introductory statements. You'll have noticed that there was a little bit of strain from the brief for the Hustings this evening, where we really want to focus on the voluntary sector in Merton. And that's to be expected, but I'd ask us to stay focused on that. There'll be other, I'm sure there's other Hustings going on across the borough, there usually are, about different issues. Now, we have had a dozen questions sent through in advance, and I'm sure many of you will have questions. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick one of these questions and then go to the floor and alternate that way. So is Susan Mansour here? Thank you. Now, just you sent 2 questions. Can we just have one of them for now, please?
Yeah, they quite similar anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so this was talking in relation to the NHS and voluntary sector in terms of working. It has been established that the voluntary and community sector adds social value and brings about cost reduction to the NHS. What steps will you guys take to address the current fragmentation in health services, promoting continuity of quality of care by using the identified savings of by VCS for VCS? That was my question.
Okay, thank you. Someone want to volunteer to answer that first? Oh, Stephen.
Thank you. As leader of the council, I'm also chair of the South London Partnership, which takes in the neighbouring boroughs of Kingston, Richmond, Croydon and Sutton. And then we have a programme called a collaboration between the NHS and social services, with local authorities working very hard to get that collaboration. So we believe that it's best if local authorities work closely with social services and social services work very, very closely with the NHS. And that's the move that we're hoping to gain within the South London Partnership here in South West London. And so it is important that social services, NHS, with the support of the local authorities, work very, very closely together, and that things don't rely on the STP system, which is a bureaucratic element coming down from the NHS. Collaboration between social services and the NHS, and they're one unit with one funding stream, is the way forward, working with VCS.
Thank you. I mean, basically, I would endorse the fact that we do need to work, the NHS needs to work better with our social services team. And in fact, I was talking at the council today and earlier in the week about some of that with some of the officers concerned. I think there's all sorts of areas where greater collaboration is important, not just on those, but also on the public health, so so that we can really tackle some of the issues like mental health. And there is good work that is being done, but I do think we can do better, and certainly, I think that is where we can all get together and do more.
I, of course, endorse what's been said. The Sutton Council, the Liberal Democratic Council in Sutton, have adopted the new care model, the NHS, the framework for enhanced health and care homes, where they're adopting that model to see if they can integrate the various services which often work independent of one another. We're going to use that as a guide to us for what we would be advocating. It is obvious that too many strands working independently, it's inefficient, it doesn't work. We need, of course, to integrate, and we will learn best practice from others, and we will look at what's happening in Sutton and with other councils and see these initiatives. Of course, I endorse the idea it must happen.
Thanks. It's impossible for me to talk about specifically where funding or savings are going to go, because I'm not aware of the exact systems that are in place. But what I would like to assure people is that the Green Party is highly conscious of the way that the NHS has become fragmented, particularly after the passing of the Health and Social Care Act 2012, whose name indicates greater collaboration, but actually, because it's forced the tendering of services up. Whether you want to call that form of outsourcing privatisation or not, that's perhaps another discussion. But we in the Green Party believe that act should be repealed. There's a reinstatement bill which Caroline Lucas has presented in the House of Commons on more than once, and there have been other parties who have stuck with that. So I suppose what I'm trying to say overall is that our national policy to repeal the Health and Social Care Act should go a long way to preventing further fragmentation, perhaps reverse some of the fragmentation that's happened, and then that way there'll be greater savings, and it will be more efficient. I think that's all I can say on the issue.
Thank you. I won't comment on the national political scene. I'll restrict my remarks to Merton. And just two really. One is that I'm glad to see there is now a good and much more productive working relationship between the council and the CCG than there was in the past. The other thing I want to mention, on the scrutiny front, we have the Healthier Communities Older People Scrutiny Panel, where there are major concerns that span across boundaries. We work together with scrutiny colleagues in Sutton and in Kingston and hold joint scrutiny sessions with the NHS to ask them what they're doing, for example, in St Helier, where there are concerns about the quality of care, and that has been effective actually in preventing the cessation of services, for example, like IVF. That was challenged through scrutiny. So again, there is a role. These are not points of political difference, to be honest with you. I think when we get together with Lib Dem councillors in Sutton or Conservative councillors in Kingston, we tend to find we've got a common line on the approach we want to take.
There is a difference between Labour and the Conservatives and Liberal Democrats. Liberal Democrats run Sutton Council, and the MP there and the leader there are doing absolutely nothing to make sure St Helier Hospital keeps its A&E, keeps its consultant-led maternity. In fact, there is a proposal, as we all know, that was well received a few years ago, to get a tram from Sutton to Wimbledon, to South Wimbledon. And TfL have suggested that as the tram comes down from Sutton, there's a little loop to the hospital, to service the hospital, to service residents and patients, and then it carries on. Did you know that the chief executive of St Helier NHS Trust has rejected that loop. How can a chief of a hospital reject a loop via trade service to their local hospital to help their people? And I haven't seen much about this from the Liberal Democrats in Sutton.
Did you want to respond to that?
Yes, the Lib Dems in Sutton have been fighting for St Helier Hospital. £24 million they put of funding, they've made directives to the hospital. They've been fighting all the way. To argue that Lib Dems not uniting St Helier Hospital is ridiculous, of course.
Moving on. Thank you. Any...
I just say though that
Sorry.
those two parties, I mean, all I want to say on the matter is that obviously as Conservatives we fully back the proposals of St Helier to ensure that it's a fit and good building for our patients and to ensure it's improving. So I just want to make sure that people don't feel that there's something that we're not on the front foot of. So
Thank you. We can, but St Helier Hospital's slightly off the brief for voluntary services. But since everyone else has, I'm not going to say no.
I was just going to point out is that Paul Scully, the MP for Sutton and Sheen, the Conservative MP, has put out a leaflet talking of a new hospital in Sutton. So
that's something which we are about.
So I'm not sure how that fits with the commitment to retaining the St Helier estate.
Which one here for that?
Good. We'll move on from St Helier for now. Like I say, I see your hand up, so we're not doing follow-up questions. We'll move to it. So is this a new question? Excellent. Thank you. Could you just quickly say your name and the question?
Thank you. My name's Felix, and I wanted to ask a question about something that's probably quite embarrassing to discuss, and that's funding. Asking each of the panel what ideas you have for supporting and enabling the voluntary sector to get funded. For instance, possibly a full-time post in Merton Council to hone in on that area. So really, what are the approaches you would adopt for providing essential funding for the voluntary sector?
Thank you. So it's helping the voluntary sector to find funding. Can I mix things up? Is that okay, Sue?
I would ask for your advice on this, I suppose. What are we not doing that we should be doing? Are we really not employing anyone in the council to do these things? Stephen, are we not?
I'll answer
Okay.
when I get the time.
I would. We need your advice on these things if we're not doing these things. It's absolutely crucial that we do. But have I got brilliant ideas for funding? No, I haven't. I've got partnerships with this. I know from the university sector that's how we work. How that's happening in Merton, I don't know. Help us work out what needs to be done on that.
Yes, as I was rudely interrupted when I was giving my 3-minute speech, I did say that the London Borough of Merton, led by the Labour Party since 2010, for 2017-18 has allocated 9.5 million to the voluntary sector. That's 83 organisations. Of course, we have officers who work with the Cabinet to make sure this money, we're one of the few councils that continue to fund the voluntary sector. So here goes. Carer Support Merton, 67,000. Ability Housing Association, 52,000. Alzheimer's Society, 238,000. Imagine Independence, 113,000. And it goes on and on. Merton, SEAL also, we support SEAL, Merton Centre for Independent Living, Pan Disability Policy and Strategy Service, Advice and Advocacy Service, £80,000. Merton and Moulton Guild of Social Service, £29,000. So yes, there is a funding for the voluntary sector in the London Borough of Merton, but if you ask these organisations that I've said they do get money, they used to get more money, but we're one of the few councils that continue to give money to the voluntary sector. There's a great partnership between the Labour Council and the voluntary sector here in the London Borough of Merton, but I would imagine that if if you ask the organisations, they probably got more in years before, but we're doing all we can to shore up, despite the cuts to our funding of over 40% since 2010. So we need to end austerity, but please be reassured that we fund the voluntary sector as best we can. 9.5 million, 2017-18. Thank you.
Just to clarify your question, I understood it wasn't so much would the council fund the voluntary sector so much as would the council help the voluntary sector find funding. Is that correct? Or
yes, I forgot to mention the context which Stephen alluded to.
Yes, and I forgot to mention the overall context which the last speaker alluded to, which is central government funding being totally removed from local authorities by 2020. And that is an unpalatable fact. And so that is part of the context for asking the question, in what ways can the voluntary sector be supported in fundraising?
Yeah, my understanding is that's the role of MVSC, is to form that kind of borough-wide to help, and I'm certainly speaking as someone not with my Kohler, but with some of my other charity work, if you want to set up PJ, is that MVSC help establish new organisations, they help find revenue streams, they help them to run well. I'm a trustee, chair of trustees, Commonside Community Development Trust, which has been going a long time, but MVSC still support us greatly with helping, not just with funding, but in governance and other areas. So MVSC is the body that does that, rather than something within the council. And like I say, with that one, I prefer the idea that it's MVSC rather than something within the civic centre, or someone within the civic centre, because it's, in my experience, it's been more consistent and more vocal on those matters than, no offence to any of the politicians here, but they have other issues to deal with as well, whereas MVSC is focused on that one thing.
But Oonagh deserves the mic.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I absolutely. I mean, I think MVSC is absolutely here, and that's where I've been, and my colleagues have been working with on so many different issues, many of which Stephen has actually mentioned. I would go a little bit further in that actually I do think, and I hear what people are saying on the government. I don't wish to be honest, and respond too much on that, because we are trying to stay local here tonight. I would though indicate that the adult social care precept is something that could have been taken in previous years, and we would have had more funding into some of our voluntary sector should that have happened. Having said that, going forwards, certainly from our side as a party, we'd be looking to utilise that and to really support those bodies. I think also what hasn't been mentioned too much is the very good work that's done on grants. And I'm aware too that a lot of residents have been involved in partnerships with volunteer groups in order to access some of those grants, not least when it comes to something like the cannons, for instance. So I think there's a lot more work that can be done in joint ideas. Just having a number of staff actually isn't, I don't think, enough. I mean, I think the amount of different bodies here tonight, as well as MVSC, can actually be probably overriding in terms of the work that's done. And I don't think we should underestimate that. That doesn't mean to say that people here should be, outside of what the council does, but it adds to it, and I think that's where we can be hugely effective in that. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I refer to the study we did earlier. A couple of the recommendations there are relevant. One, that the council and MVSC should work together to identify sources of funding. Another was that MVSC should encourage groups to forge links through Merton Connected. And when we looked
mentioned Sustainability Council. Joyce Pouncing. Sorry, that's what you said. Sorry, I'm so sorry.
Okay. The fact. So, I'm not denying. I think the Green Party won't deny that the current administration, Labour administration, are faced with a really hard task when the cuts to local government are so severe. I think, though, that one needs to raise the point that Labour's so-called business-like approach, which is a phrase that Mr. Alambritis likes to use fairly frequently, does need to be questioned because it has felt, I'm speaking as a constituent here, it has felt a little bit like a bribe to get people to vote for Labour by saying we have decided to take a business-like approach and freeze your council tax for X number of years. And we feel in the Green Party that, as Oonagh pointed out, an opportunity was missed with the precept. However, I think it's also convenient that Oonagh has said that she's going to steer clear of talking about austerity, these matters on a national level. I know that we're keeping it local, but it's that I think where I'm going with this is that I think it also needs to be acknowledged that even if the precept had been put into effect, it would probably only have raised something like 2 million, and our apologies if I am giving the wrong figure, that's what I've read. Whereas if you look at, yesterday for example, I was looking at a report about the millions to be lost in adult social care between 2010 and 2020, and it amounts to about 30 million. 2 million, or whatever it is a drop in the ocean.
16 million actually.
What's 16 million?
It was 16 million that we could have had.
Okay.
1/6.
Okay.
Stayed in the pockets of people.
Okay. So there's some debate about those figures.
No, it's costed, and it was agreed by the finance director ahead of the last budget. There was £16 million of money that could have been raised by increasing the adult social care taking the adult social care precept and using. At any rate, so that money could have gone to helping adult social care in particular and other areas of support.
I was in the last full council meeting where they discussed the budget, and I don't want us to rehash that at the moment. It's obviously very important, but it's what's gone is gone. The decisions that were made, that some of us voted for as residents and some didn't have been made. There were mistakes made on both parts. That's called life. The biggest mistake in my experience is not making decisions. So let's carry on. Right. So I have a question from Joyce Pouncing. Is she here? You said 2 questions as well, which is very good. Oh, have I got a mistake there? Well, ask a question anyway, Joyce. Thank you.
Right. Well, new housing is really important, but it should not make our air unfit to breathe, cause flooding, and add to climate change. It's perfectly possible these days to build homes without these negative effects. So how are you going to ensure the planning process will achieve this in all future developments? Because it often seems that planning decisions have carried on as if we don't have to worry about the environment. Thank you.
Okay. Slightly from the voluntary sector, but nonetheless, Councillor.
Well, thank you for the question. Housing is really important. It's probably one of the hottest issues, certainly amongst my boys' age group and some of the younger generation, as well as affordable housing. What I would say as well, in addition to those problems, is the fact that in Merton we have only one development that's actually achieved 40% of affordable housing since 2010, which is quite a shocking statistic. But in the meantime, in terms of building, certainly in my ward, the Wimbledon Stadium has been built, which is on a floodplain, but by building with more clever ways of doing so, the Environment Agency has agreed to let something like that through. So we can't, I mean, London, you could say, is mostly a floodplain. So we do have to look at ways of building. We need extra housing. Having said that, we do need the infrastructure. So I fully hear what you're saying about education, doctor surgeries, ensuring we've got the right transport links, and, as you have rightly indicated, flooding. So those are all issues which come under the planning committee, and ones which I know some other councillors that are here tonight do have to look at. There's serious issues, but the Environment Agency does look and take cognizance of flooding in looking at those proposals. So.
I don't know if any of you recall a chap who used to be leader of Bradford City Council, Eric Pickles. He then went on to be the Secretary of State for Local Government. And what did he do? He said you can build flats in industrial estates. You can build flats in factories. You can build flats in shops. You can build flats without planning permission next door, to the extent that it's not great. So he's managed to get residents, neighbours at each other's throats. So that is the Tory legacy on housing. You can go to the industrial estate in Moulton, Willows, and there's Connect House. And without an iota of connection with Merton had absolutely nothing to do with it, could do nothing about it, and a factory was turned into flats for residents. So that is the legacy of the Tory government. They've also slashed funding for council properties for councils, and I, as a leader of a council, cannot borrow to build. We do our level best on affordability. The term affordability is in disrepute, because you say, oh, it's worth 500,000, but hey, you can have it for 400,000. So we need a new term for affordability that is genuine. There are difficult decisions that have occurred. For example, AFC Wimbledon. It's great to have that team back in Wimbledon. And yes, the affordability level there has only been 9.3%. However, it will go up, as I thought it would, and hopefully it'll go up quite substantially, as the major developer, Galliard, is now linked in with housing associations. So that affordability will go up. Planning is handed down to local authorities, the regulations, the laws, the bylaws, by national government. Local authorities, planning applications committees, go by very strict rules on planning. There are people who are better versed than myself on planning. But in planning, all these things are looked at. The Environment Agency report, the Transport report, the Highways report, the Air Quality report, everything is looked at. And at the end of the day, it's a democratic decision of the elected councillors if it goes to the Planning Applications Committee. If there's a problem with all that, then we need to look at the national planning guidelines and change those so that air quality supersedes all else.
Thank you. I've sat on
Hyde Park doesn't come into it. Hyde Park, affordability doesn't come into it. Hyde Park estate.
Perhaps Councillor can answer the question.
Yeah. We did recently pass outline applications for Hyde Park, for Ravensby and Eastfield, so quite a complex decision. Let me talk about affordability. Let me tell you how many affordable homes were built in Merton in 2017. I guess we're meant to build in total for about 400 per annum, 40% of that would be 160. The true figure is 9. Now, it's a freak figure, I agree. The previous year we achieved, I think, 124. But the combination of not being able to require any affordable housing on developments of 10 or fewer units, allowing the use of viability appraisals, Steve has mentioned this in connection with the AOC Stadium, to say if we do that what's changing? Viability appraisals now, I think we're moving to a point where those will be published. We are also insisting where we can on clawback mechanisms, so that if profits turn out to be higher than we're told at the outset, more either money back or affordable housing. But it's all within the framework of what we're allowed to do by government. Thus, air quality, for example, what I've been reading would suggest to me that in future we will be required to take that into account along with all of the other factors. Again, reference to the High Path planning application, the number of bodies consulted with reference to that was just unbelievable. But this is right. These things need to be regulated. They need to be appraised properly. But it will be within the sort of quasi-legal framework that we have to take decisions in planning.
Thanks. We seem to be talking a lot about affordable housing, whereas I thought and that's a very important issue, but I thought the original question was really about environmental sustainability. And it probably goes without saying that the Green Party is at the forefront of pushing forward policies to build environmentally sensitive and sustainable housing. Personally, I don't work in that field, so I don't have that specific knowledge, but we have locally been putting out freedom of information requests to find out exactly what Merton Council are doing to tackle air pollution. We know that they've released some plans recently. We know that there seems to be some stalling with this concrete batching plant on Plough Lane. It's turned down now. Okay. But we also are very aware that I appreciate I'm moving on to pollution generally. We'll come back to housing. But we're very aware that Sadiq Khan, as the Labour Mayor of London, is seeming very serious about cleaning up London's air. But we feel that the current council administration don't really seem to have got the memo on that one. In terms of other sustainable housing, I suppose not just sustainable materials, but solar panels we would like to see. And all I can do really without then consulting further policies is just assure you that if a Green Party councillor or councillors were elected, we would be at the forefront of driving forward housing that is more environmentally friendly than it is. And what I would just say with the affordable housing, because I do think it's important because that's been talked about quite a lot, is that this target of 40% of affordable seems incredibly low to me. That's saying...
They can't even reach
well, indeed. And 60% of unaffordable housing? What kind of society do we want to live in? That's not my bag. Anyway.
The Lib Dems manifesto was a new Merton Council-owned building company with a target of 50% affordable housing. I think we have to lead by example on both affordable housing and environmentally sustainable housing. We should use that model, that company, to actually show that this can make sense both environmentally, economically and commercially. Our record, or Merton's record, on affordable housing and on environmental sustainability has been woeful. But we must go forward. Rather than just sit here and moan about what's happened, let's look at the new opportunity for the Virgin Active site. How can that be used to move forward to produce somewhere with affordable and environmentally friendly building? Let's stop fighting out what's gone wrong in the past. Let's all today, why don't we say we will work together to make that site something that Merton is proud of, something that works for the future, and learn from the mistakes of the past.
Thank you. A question about voluntary services in Merton on this side. Thank you.
Thank you. So, I just want to start with a quote actually.
An injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. As Martin Luther King died 50 years ago today. Now, in our 10-year history in Merton, at Merton Sill, we've repeatedly raised concerns about poor delivery of services to disabled people. We've asked the Council to properly assess the cumulative impact of cuts to services, and we've asked the Council to engage with disabled people, as you should do under the Equality Act. We're concerned that ongoing failure to do these things could amount to institutional discrimination, and we'd like to know what you will do to address this in the next administration.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Is it live? Yes. Well, we in the Green Party are also very concerned about the implications of funding cuts for Merton Sill. I think it's important to mention, in particular, the closure of the Independent Living Fund in June 2015. Our understanding is that it was generally liked. People felt that it provided a degree of certainty in their lives. Then responsibility was shifted to the councils. Councils were invited to ring-fence it. Do correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that Merton Council didn't ring-fence it, and that there's clear evidence of a levelling down of care packages, which has produced great emotional turmoil in people, as well as a general sense of upheaval. And it's apparently costing a lot more to administer. Now, what we would... I mentioned before about the cuts to adult social care, but I think it's... I'd also like to make the point that we cannot conflate adult social care with the support that Merton Sill is given. It's not that adult social care pertains only to people in their advanced years and their needs, but that tends to be what it goes towards. And I think we need to recognise that the needs of disabled people and people in their advanced years mustn't be put together. These are people with different needs. And I suppose what I would like to assure Merton Sill is that if there came from central government or local government a policy change that affects disabled people directly, we would seek to begin a conversation with disabled people straight away. We would like to involve them in the initial exploration of the impact of the policy change on their lives. We'd like to include them in decision-making processes at every level. We would never presume to speak on behalf of disabled people, which, having read Merton Sill's brilliant press releases, the indication is that they don't feel that they're being consulted properly, that it's not genuinely a two-way process, it's a done deal. I think that's me.
On the Independent Living Fund issue, I think to correct the actual issue, eventually it was ring-fenced for a year, but it took months and months of campaigning by Merton Sill to do that. We had talked to them early on, we argued for it, and we failed. Eventually, Merton Sill got it through. But all the anguish people felt thinking they were losing that Independent Living Fund, that went on for months until it was done. That goes back to my point in my presentation. We need to listen to you. John said to me when we met last week, look, we could use this money more efficiently if consultations were a real creative dialogue. The trouble is, I've seen it the same with the police stations, it's a tick box exercise. You go through a consultation that's meaningless. What we need to do is consult with disabled people at the outset and listen. At various times, we just go through that process and don't really listen. We have a predetermined idea of what's best for you. We don't know everything. We need to work with you. Merton Sill could advise, could help us on these issues. Why don't we listen to them in the consultation and change what we initially proposed in light of what they say to us?
Lila, I think you know there's always a place for you to scrutiny when you come to talk to us at budget time. I know you're disappointed also that what you say isn't always reflected in what the directors then decide, but scrutiny is important in providing that channel. I think it
What can one say? I already alluded to the adult social care precept not being taken. I know that the Merton Cell were very upset by that, and we worked hard with them to try to better achieve that. I'm pleased that this year that finally the administration did take it and use it. I do think that there was an injustice in earlier years, and I would say that all the way through the administration is not good on consultation, not just with yourselves, but with other bodies. And I think we see that across the piece. There is a lot of top-down decision making. Scrutiny isn't given often the real right to be able to scrutinise properly, and consultation is very weak. Again, that's top-down. If you won't mind my alluding, I think the ladies in the Green Party did in terms of the mayor, but one of the worst consultations was announced for the police station, and it's seen throughout, really. And I think Lila's right to highlight it and call it out. I would say that we would be absolutely protecting the vulnerable and ensuring that people are properly consulted ahead of any decision making, because I do believe that's the right way forward. In fact, that's one of the main reasons I became a councillor, because there was a little bogus consultation that actually closed a library in my ward by the Labour Party before 2002, and that was a shocking thing that happened. And to this day, you may not have been there. That I
I'll give you one.
but not in Wimbledon Park. But at any rate, I don't want. There's no point going back in life. Let's go forward. But certainly, poor consultation has been at the root of Merton Labour, and I've seen it time and time and time again.
Thank you. I don't recognise this talk that we don't consult adequately. There is a Cabinet Office protocol on consulting with all stakeholders, otherwise we would be challenged in court, either judicial review or whatever, High Court. I want to commend the work of Ben Still. Lila is always welcome to Cabinet to give her talk, her view. I used to be a Disability Rights Commissioner. Before then, I was on the Disability Rights Task Force that's worked to bring forward the DDA parts 1, 2 and 3 that were passed by William Hague in 1995, which is still on the table. I then went on to be an Equality Human Rights Commissioner with Trevor Phillips. So I do know what it is to be in touch with disabled people. I believe in the social model of disability, that it's us that see the disability, that people are disabled by our views and the way we operate as a society, and that we need to work better. But all I can go by is what residents say to me. And I have a letter here from a resident to myself, and obviously I won't name the resident, but it's a Wimbledon resident. I really do want to express my profound thanks to you and the London Borough of Merton for the financial and practical help I have received and continue to receive as a disabled OAP. That's her letter, that's what she says. I think this council must come very high on the list of best boroughs on its provision of care for the elderly. I can only go by what residents tell me. We will continue to do all we can to help the disabled community here in the London Borough by working closely with MCIL and with all organisations. There are competing pressures on all local authorities. And what I would say to those who are talking about the Wimbledon Police Station is go to Amber Rudd, the Home Secretary, and ask her why she has cut the Met Police budget by just under £1 billion. That's forced the Mayor of London to make these drastic cuts, which I'm opposed to. I'm into both Amber Rudd and to Sadiq Khan, that there should be a substantial police presence the police. Well, let's do that with hospitals, let's do that with the ambulances, and let the government off the hook completely. It's cloud cuckoo land because the police were told, the police say it's the revenue cost that matter, not the capital cost of the premises. Absolute
What date was that letter? Stephen, what date? What date was the letter from the residents?
So we're not doing follow-up questions. Any more questions? Yes, at the back.
Did them 10 years ago.
The lady at the back with the glasses.
Hi, my name is Sai. I run a business in Moulton who's very involved in the volunteering and community activities. My question, and before asking my question, can I just remind the panel that us who are working in the voluntary sector, us who are trying to make the community better, our time is very valuable. So it's not the Parliament, it's not PM question time to make fun and distract people. So can I just ask, at least to my question, stick to the facts and answer the question to the best of your ability, rather than interrupting each other and trying to make it look like Parliament. We have got things to do, and if you are here, it's because we want to know who would be the best to choose for the community, rather than listening to your, I think, from my point of view, childish acts. So going back to my question, we have, as a business, we have worked very hard to try to bridge a gap between the charities and voluntary sector that exist in our area, which is Moulton, and try to bring more residents and more businesses together to help that. I want to know from the people who are in the council, which is interesting, you put them all together on one side, I want to know from them, what, and practical example, what have you done to support such things? Because I think Merton is such a divided borough. What have you done to empower the voluntary sector, to bring people together? What have you done to empower the residents to join the existing voluntary sectors? And then from the people on the left, if you get selected to be in the council, what would you do to do that? What would you do to empower the community? What would you do to help businesses like me, who wants to do more, who wants to do better, to be able to do it easily, because I don't have access to the resources that you would have because of your presence in the council and you know many people, many channels. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's stick to the point. And good, thank you.
Here.
Oh, by the way, the seating arrangement wasn't planned like that, but thanks for pointing that out.
We must use resources like this, council resources like this, to help you have these meetings with people, to help you have that dialogue, and we must change the mindset. The mindset must be that you have ideas that we can use, and we will assist you in that. I don't know what the council has done in the past about this. I'll be interested to know. But our view should be that the resources of the council we can use as best we can. I'm amazed at these spaces we have around the council properties that we don't actually utilise enough. Can we use those to facilitate that sort of dialogue, that sort of activity together? Is there space within the council we're not using properly?
And I think the fact that Maslin, the voluntary, the MVSC, here tonight, I mean, that's what it's all about, really. In terms of what to do to bridge the gap, that's a discussion that I think dates way back in terms of...
I'm sorry, I'm not talking about what MVSC can do. I'm not talking about what they can do. I'm interested to know you as a councillor and your group as a party in the council, what specifically have you done in the past?
I'm saying, I think when I started my introduction, I went through specifically all the different groups and further that we've been involved with as a group, and individually, individual councillors in my group, including myself, are out or involved. I've been a trustee of Polkrook Theatre. I mean, we're all governors, many of us, school governors across the patch, and we're consistently working with the voluntary sector in all sorts of capacities, so that we can bridge the gap across the borough, and not just not just in one or two places. I had the privilege of being a mayor of Merton, and so I've seen that work, and I feel very passionately for it. I'm wearing a badge of the dementia friendly, so I've actually I've actually walked the walk apart from just the talk, and I do wish to do that. I mentioned to you earlier carer support, which is another group that's really close to my heart as well, and I think we all come from different walks of life as councillors. So I'm going to come off the party points here, because I actually do strongly think that most councillors are trying to give their best, and actually work for that very fact. So I don't think it's, I would say that, and I see people right the way across. It's amazing to me how many people double up in all sorts of capacities. So you don't just see them in the church, you actually see them down at Age UK or the Wimbledon Guild, or or in the school, or in all sorts of capacities, giving what they can, day in, day out, and that's what we want to support, and that's what we're here to do, and to listen, and to try to do that. So it's not just tokenism of clearing up a patch that somebody said. Actually, I see the people across, and I commend the work that's being done. Yes, we can all do more, and I think that's what we're all here to do. So, thank you.
Firstly, thank you for the work that you do. Without knowing exactly what your business is and what you're doing exactly in terms of volunteering and charity work, it's a bit difficult to say exactly what we would do, but you clearly feel that there are gaps, that there is not enough joined up thinking, that you're not being encouraged, you're not being enabled by the current administration. So apologies if this is too abstract, but we would want to sit down with you and find out exactly what it is that's frustrating you. Where are the gaps? And we would then go from there, which kind of relates back to the question about Merton and consultation, which has been a theme. But thank you for what you do, and I hope to meet you when I'm about in Moulton.
More than welcome for coming.
Thank you.
Yes, are you? No, sure. I'll go last. Always an advantage.
Yes, but Samara, do you mind if I say that Samara runs a business called Geeks in Moulton? It's an incredibly successful and growing software business, and as far as I'm concerned as her ward councillor, it's a real jewel in our crown, nested there above the underground station in Moulton. I'm not quite so sure why you want to get the council involved. I think we're doing pretty well with your charity efforts.
I don't want us only to be the one, and I'm sure if there was collaboration and interest from the council, we could do more. And I'm not being unfair to you, you're very much involved in what we do, and you're always supportive. But it's more about about anyone else who wants to.
Yes. Let me riff on a bit. I'd like to mention Love Moulton. We met together last week. Now, that is a very explicit decision there that it's the Moulton businesses, together with Moulton Hall Park now, and other organisations that have a role to play in the life of Moulton. We're not actually looking to get the council involved there for the moment, at least. My own party, Black Park Independence, came into being because we didn't want the council involved either, or at least the way they were involved 28 years ago. We felt we could do a lot better as independents. I think where you will need to, and hopefully we can work together on this, is as the plans for the future of Moulton evolve through the regeneration, I'm very, very keen that both the residents and the current businesses there do have a say in how that shapes up. We don't want to simply hand it over to another land securities and get what is wished upon us. It should be shaped
Small Business Federation and your wins at Queen's Awards to Industry, so well done. I will I would disagree with you that this is not a united borough. Whenever we ask residents through the independent annual residence survey on community cohesion, whether people get on with each other, it is quite a high score into the mid-70s.
Well, I live in the borough, so...
Yes, well that is your view, but this is a united borough.
We're not really, I've got time for a dialogue.
Yes.
I find it fascinating, I'll be honest with you, but we don't have time.
So the Third Acres Borough, people get on with each other here, they enjoy 20% of the green space, 5,000 extra primary school places, parents are very happy with that, and obviously we carry on serving the residents of this borough. But obviously we can do much more. So we have what's called Merton Partnership, where the Chamber of Commerce is involved, the police are involved, the NHS is involved, the voluntary sector is involved, the MVSC is involved, where we get together to talk with stakeholders, those stakeholders, to make sure that we are a community and cohesive. And the voluntary element within the library is iconic for the whole of London in terms of how volunteers can be. And we need to build on that. And I agree with you, we need to do bigger and better on and recognise. The library is the library. Other boroughs are knocking on our door about how we engage with the voluntary sector on libraries, and obviously we need to extend that. But MVSC will tell you that we, as a local authority, used to win, and we don't enter anymore because we keep winning it, the Compact Award, and that is the Cabinet Office recognising the voluntary element within local authorities. We've won it year in, year out, and you need to look up Compact at the Cabinet Office. Chris Frost, who sadly passed away, who was the Chief Executive here, won awards year in, year out. Andrew Wakefield as well, recognition of the voluntary sector, an element in this borough. You need to look up Compact.
Okay, thank you. That's a dialogue that could go on for a long time. Yes, and there's some questions over here as well. We're getting short on time, so this lady here.
Hello, hi. I'm from Watermeads Residents Association. I was just interested in the point that was made earlier about bringing together the council and the voluntary sector, and particularly around that sort of encouraging really local level action. So, I'm part of my local residents association. We have a great space, residence room, and we want to do more using that room. We're also, obviously thinking about, little things like permission to use the room and insurance policies and all that. It actually can be a hindrance in some ways. Obviously, you want to do things in a safe way, but I'm just thinking about actually how we can support action at that level, really local around voluntary action. And linked into that is thinking about the use of our contracts. So how we, the council is working with, potentially with businesses, but through things like the Social Value Act, and how that could be used more to encourage more volunteering and sort of really local action. So again, bring together the council and the voluntary sector, but through things like contracts as well.
I didn't quite hear a question, but I'm happy to speak again on that. I mean, certainly I think I know our resident associations, I would say, across the borough all work pretty hard at doing what they can with the council. Normally councillors are sitting on a lot of those residents' associations and taking up issues on behalf of them and working in conjunction. I would also say that certainly where they can, and if you're lucky enough to have a room and so on, certainly the council will be able to advertise that a bit for you. There's a Merton website which we're constantly trying to make sure that more things are up on it. And I would encourage you, to actually, to definitely use any space you've got. I know that there's a lot of community groups that are calling out for, scout groups in different places, and just generally for little meetings, because too often they're often booked out to more commercial type of groups. So I know myself, when you're trying to find a space, quite often, the ballet class or the this or the that, the Zumba and so on. They're great, they're wonderful classes, but it does mean that quite often you can't get your little meeting that you're trying to hold. So the more other spaces that there are, fantastic. And yes, I mean, open door from definitely my side and our group in terms of what we can do with resident associations and any other businesses that have space, and let's advertise it better, because quite often people aren't aware of what's out there. So, thank you.
Yeah, I think we could do more to advertise the spaces that we have, but obviously you benefited from Moulton Estate, where you have the rooms there in Octavia, Rawnsley, where we met with my co-councillor colleague Peter McKay, where we took on Clarion, who were going to charge leaseholders the earth, and that's come down after a tribunal case from, I don't know, 23,000 to 6,000. So that is an example of how councillors working with residents, with community space, and we need to continue to safeguard our community spaces as we move ahead, increase their capacity, make them fit for the future.
Yes, I think you've got to lean on your councillors for what you want, and if you're not getting it, then chuck them out and elect your own. That's what we did. No, we are effectively sponsored by a residents' association. Because of that, we take our guidance from them. So it's grassroots up. It's not top down. Little example: we were recently in each ward allocated £5,000 to spend on small improvements. We took it along to our monthly meeting with residents, said what sort of things we want to see. There's 1,001 ways you can, councillors can and should be communicating, or all councillors, and if they're not, you just hold them to account.
Space is a huge issue, which is why I talked about it earlier. The fact you have a space and it's not being utilised completely, there needs to be more where we do advertise these things, or something as simple as a council website where we put space is to offer. Again, my mantra has been the same all the way through. Things you need, we need to hear from you what you want. And as Peter said, talk to your councillors, push us as to what you need. On the Social Value Act, on the whole, it hasn't worked. It's part of the problem. On these tick box exercises, Lib Dem policy is to toughen up the Social Value Act to actually give it some teeth. Because it's been there since 2012 now. It's rarely cited when local authorities when they want contracts. It's something that needs to be done. So you're absolutely right. But again, it's us listening to you. It's you telling us what you need. What you need is not the same as many. Many of the associations I have contact with, space is the big issue, constantly, time and time again. You have space, something can be traded there. That's the type of thing we should be doing.
Thanks. I cannot comment in any detail on the Social Value Act, I'm afraid. I don't know other details important to me to state. I'm not going to pretend to. I love the fact that you have a residents' association, and I bemoan the fact that where I live in Hatfield Mead Estate, we don't have one. Apologies if you don't feel this is answering your question, but I feel this is absolutely relevant because I find it so interesting that Councillor Alambritis talks of taking on Clarion, because Clarion is my landlord in the Hatfield Mead Estate. That's after it was Circle Housing, that's after it was Circle Housing Moulton Priory Homes, and the organisations keep on changing. And I wanted to raise the point that in terms of empowering estates such as yours and mine, the decision, the approach of Merton Council to hand over certain parts of the borough, as I mentioned in my opening statement, to businesses like Clarion is highly dubious, and we in Hatfield Mead Estate have been presented with a Section 20 notice that started off as £13,000, we beat it down to £7,000. I could go on with the story. There has been some help from the councillors, but I'm afraid that overall it's only been one of the three councillors who's shown any initiative with this. The other two have been completely silent, Councillor Alambritis, and we are finding it nigh on impossible to truly hold Clarion to account. So I suppose I would just end by saying that if the Green Party were, if a councillor or councillors were elected, we would want to change that approach. We would like housing back in local authority control, because we believe that organisations like Clarion are causing our hands to be tied on a number of issues, and they're actually undermining what residents' associations seek to do.
Thank you. I'm afraid we've only got time for one more question. Oh, look at that hand went up so quickly. I'm sorry for everyone else. Thank you for coming, for all those questions, but your hand shot up. So wait for a microphone.
This meeting was advertised as ending at 8 o'clock.
Right. But yes, but there's summing up after the questions.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Well, I've come from the voluntary sector, 100% voluntary sector. I come from Rethink Mental Illness, Merton and Sutton, but most of our members are in Merton, and we are an association of carers and users. We have far more members in Merton because, on the whole, services in Sutton are much better. We represent carers of people who have got schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, clinical depression, and borderline personality disorder, and we have existed in the borough since 2002. I did send a question in, and I thought it would be read out, but it hasn't been. So I will get a move on. I want to say that we are 100% voluntary. No one in our organisation gets paid. So we do not have this difficulty in recruiting volunteers, because the carers and the users of mental health services are very, very concerned at the lack of facilities and the lack of what is offered to them. I sent my question in about section 117, which is about the statutory duty of the local authority and the NHS to provide supportive housing of a sufficient standard to try to ensure that a patient is not readmitted to hospital. Now, my question about Merton is that most of Merton's patients under section 117 are being placed out of borough, particularly in Croydon and particularly in the Thornton Heath area, which, as you know, was one of the first areas where Asperger's was introduced and where they are at risk. So, also, on mental health, I just want to say to Councillor Alambritis that Merton had the lowest expenditure on mental health services. Now, I'm going on, but it's a question. My question is, what are the panel proposing to do to improve the services offered by the council in housing and other ways in the borough?
To support people with
severe mental illness.
Thank you. Councillor Alambritis.
Yes, no, obviously I would take on board what you say. I don't know all the facts, all the figures. However, there is a national debate about the government and the cuts to mental health services. It is a big issue for all local authorities, not just here in Merton. But if you are saying that our expenditure is the lowest, I would look into that for you. We are allocating much more in the way of adult social care funding, and I will see whether that will include allocation for mental health services as well.
I have to say, I find it shocking that Councillor Alambritis doesn't know that. Everyone, or many families within Merton know how shocking mental health provision is. I know from family experience, I know other families have the same. It's been a continuing issue. We're not just talking about the last couple of years, the last 15 years at least. It's been shocking in this borough. And the fact that the leader of the council just says, suddenly a man's been quoting figures all night long, suddenly knows no figures on this issue, so it speaks volumes. It's something we have to do, we have to embrace. We can't simply sit there and say we will not raise the council tax in line with inflation when we have the worst mental health facilities in London. It's simply not good enough. And stop.
Okay, firstly, thank you very much for all of the work that you do. To hear that it's 100% volunteering is just incredible. In terms of supportive housing and people being placed outside of the borough, I didn't know that, and I'm absolutely appalled by it. I would just like to say on a personal note, as I said in my opening statement, I helped to care for my father. Part of his health issues are mental health issues, and I know how important it is to have his support network who live in the village in which they live around him. So I can absolutely see the urgency of what you're saying, and all that I can assure you is that if a Green councillor or councillors were to get in, we would want to have a conversation with you where we did our absolute utmost to make sure that people weren't isolated further geographically, but also it would be an emotional isolation, of course, as well. But really, thank you for highlighting it. Thank you for what you do.
Yes, I would just say thank you for all your work. And clearly, that's a huge commitment that you've been making personally and your whole group. I would say that here, certainly, mental health. I think I mentioned that in one of my opening remarks. Is very important. And we know that there is extra funding coming through, but I would also highlight what I had said earlier about the adult social care precept, which I do feel strongly is important and able to help in some of this area. Affordable housing and housing generally, I have endorsed and fully support for our council, because I do think that is an area of much greater work that we can all be involved with, and supportive housing is clearly really important as well. My late mother went through issues, and I think it's really a hold on us, absolutely, to ensure that someone, and I know the importance of people being close to their loved ones and relatives and people that can actually help care for them as well, in order to prevent them falling into some of these problems. And I think preventative work, actually going a little bit further, is really important as well, in an area that's sometimes neglected, unfortunately, when going that's rough, sometimes just trying to troubleshoot rather than actually going back to some of the preventative work that I know some of these groups do so well, but I do sometimes feel that in the council we can be doing a lot more. So really I endorse your work, and I hope that should we manage to swap seats, that we can ensure that greater funding is in that area. So thank you.
Yes, Laura, I'm well aware of your dedication to work that we've been doing many, many years now. Here's a thought. We now have in Merton our own local authority property company. It's a toe in the water at the moment, with plans to develop 77 units on various plots around the borough. If that's successful, and the approach at the moment is that is to be strictly a commercial venture, I have, in a recent review of the need for to recruit and retain teachers in the borough, for example, suggested we should look at finding ways of helping them into housing. I don't think I'm going anywhere with that one, but when we come to the regeneration board, we are looking at a big development there, possibly 1,800 units. I think we have to look carefully at, yes, these things need to be commercial on the one hand, but on the other hand, if we want to create a budget to build the right sort of units within them, then we should be doing just that, actually. There's a lot of development in
sure many of you do, look out for when there's other hustings around and bring up issues. And I would just say speak to your local councillors. They are all in it to try and serve us, I believe. So, and keep the pressure on them. We're going to have some closing statements now. And I see no reason why we should go in the same order as we did before. So, Councillor Alambritis, would you go first?
Yes, thank you for this, the hustings. I think it is important to, during these times of austerity, to provide hope for residents. We will continue to work with the voluntary sector. We'll do all we can to repeat the successes that we've had since 2014. 4,000 extra primary school places, a new secondary school on the way, best performance for GCSE progression in the country, first in the country, all secondary schools we are outstanding, increase the budget for adult social care by 9 million, children's services top 5 in the country, children's services, Wandsworth inadequate, Merton good with outstanding features. That's a mark of the reputation of the London Borough of Merton under a Labour council. Wandsworth, with its low council tax, doesn't look after its children. They're at risk, inadequate services there. We've frozen the council tax for 7 years, that's left money in people's pockets. We've protected council tax benefit for low-income families. 10,000 low-income families who work but earn little money have been protected by this council from a Tory nasty cut of 10% to their support. And we've rediscovered the Mitchell project, new leisure centre in Moulton opening in October 2018, business like 13 million set aside, will open in 2018, 6 lanes, 25-metre pool, cafe facility, a gym overlooking the panorama of Moulton Park, and the old gym comes down and returns back to grass, so we don't lose a single blade of grass. We open a brand new library, 400 libraries closed in this country over the last so many years, and we continue to do what we can to save St Helier Hospital, and there will be a new 20,000-seater stadium for AFC Wimbledon, which will regenerate that whole area of Wimbledon Park, which is the ward that belongs to Moulton.
Well, I thank you for listening to us, and I also thank you for all your questions, because I think they have been really enlightening. I hope we've managed to answer a bit without being too political. Certainly, I know I have tried. I think I actually do want to stay and have wanted to stay local. I think that is where all the issues are at the moment here in Merton. And as a councillor, I'm keen to engage with you, and I know my councillors are in my group and the candidates that are standing in May. So I would say that if we haven't answered everything, do go to the Merton Conservatives website. You can contact us via that. You can also contact your councillors. We all remain councillors, by the way, up until May the 3rd. So we are still dealing with casework. Do contact us if needs be. But for those that are standing in actual candidates in wards where we don't have councillors at present, as I say, the Merton Conservatives website. Otherwise, I would just reiterate all that really I've said earlier this evening. We have strong policies in terms of cleaning our streets, protecting the weekly bin collection, transforming our high streets and town centres, reducing traffic and congestion, and tackling air pollution is seriously important. But of course, antisocial behaviour and zero tolerance from crime, it affects us all. The Crossrail 2 coming, we support. We want to see it enhancing but not damaging our communities. I would also say improving and building a better St Helier, ensuring that our council's finances are fit for purpose, so that we are taking what we can, and ensuring that we continue to protect the vulnerable, with an ambitious plan too to build more homes and affordable housing, ensuring that we have the school places that we need, and there's some really interesting work too, which I think can be done, and that's an issue that hasn't really touched us tonight, around the homelessness. We touched on mental health, didn't touch so much on that, but I do think the overriding thing for me here and for my councillors is the importance of consultation. Listening, speaking, and meeting with all of you guys is seriously what we're here for, actually. It's what we're elected for, fundamentally, and trying to ensure that your needs and your views are heard. And I commend MVSC and would like to end on that note because you've brought us here tonight. I really appreciate this, Hustings, and thank you for giving me that opportunity and my fellow panel. Thank you.
Okay, it has been a great privilege and pleasure to engage with all of you this evening. I'm pleased to say that Merton Green Party is enjoying burgeoning engagement with Merton residents, and we are really happy to be here. As I said in my opening statement, we value highly the energy and dedication of our innovative voluntary sector, who provide lifelines for so many of us. But equally, as I also said at the beginning, we are concerned that so-called austerity measures are resulting in our community's increasing dependence upon volunteers, while simultaneously inhibiting the ability of those volunteers to deliver the kinds of services that they not only feel, but know and can prove are beneficial to the well-being of our community. So if elected, you would find that the Green Party would do battle with the relevant bodies and individuals in order to protect the funding of public services. We would work hard to improve our surroundings in ways that bring about equality and access to well-maintained public spaces and that are environmentally sensitive and sustainable, with a particular eye, as Pete Southgate says, on the proposed regeneration of the centre of Moulton. And because the Green Party prides itself on being democratic, bottom-up and member-led, we would, above all, listen to you and involve you in decision-making processes. We weary of consultations that turn out to be done deals, and in some case, a total lack of consultation. And we question the so-called business-like approach of the council, as it seems to equate to, here are some cuts, here's a council tax rise, deal with it, which we believe does not a fully functioning democracy make. So I hope that our party's contributions to tonight's debate demonstrate that we are willing and capable of effecting positive change in our community, for our voluntary sector and beyond. It has been enlightening to hear your views on a range of issues, and I would like to assure you that I will be taking all of them back to my fellow Green Party members. Finally, we are standing 15 candidates across 13 wards. Thus, if anything that I've said tonight strikes a chord with you, please, when you go to vote on the 3rd of May, consider voting for your Green Party candidate or candidates, and thereby help to introduce a new voice into a council that is quite clearly constrained by its over-reliance on a two-party system. No offence, Peter Southgate. We not only try to hold the council to account, and will continue to do so regardless of the results of the elections, but we would like to work with the council too, to build upon Merton's strengths, overcome its weaknesses, in order to make the borough an environment in which we all can thrive. So thank you very much.
Listening to Councillor Alambritis, one of the Wardian phrase about knowing the price of everything and the value of nothing. To sit here and boast about holding council tax with zero increase for 7 years when we have worse mental health provision, falling environmental standards, no or a hopeless attainment of affordable housing, it's just not good enough. We need to actually think through how we're going to spend the money and how we're going to take that money in. You are crucial to what makes a society work. The third sector is the difference between what's good and bad in a society. We must work with you. My mantra from the beginning is as it is at the end, that we need to listen to you. We need to consult properly and listen to what you say. There's too many politicians preaching, not enough politicians listening. We want to change that. I've seen that, of course, with the police station. I've seen that with many things, with Viola, with Merton Hall. That time and time again, an issue turns into a problem because we do not consult. And you know far more about these issues than us. We need to learn from you. Thank you for what you've taught me tonight. And I hope and I promise and pledge that your Merton Lytton councillors will hold two main parties to account, this duopoly to account, and we will actually try and involve you, voluntary sector, in the deliberations and create a unified, a less partisan community. And yet again, Stephen is nattering in my ear.
Consult on the U-turn on tuition fees.
Thank you.
Steve,
No
consultation whatsoever. Whipping camera straight away.
Yes, we are, as you admitted at the beginning, a party of just three, but I like to think we pumped a little bit above that weight numerically in council. Very glad that our leader has latterly converted to the need to fund our care appropriately. Just a shame we didn't get that message a year or so earlier. And very relieved too to hear you say that we must pay the right cost, or recognise the need to fund social care properly. I should draw a delicate veil out of from her manifesto of 2010 in that regard, with its 10% cut in council tax. But that's enough snipey stuff from me. What I do want to do actually is to throw out not a challenge, but ask MBSC to take a look at the Mayor's new strategy on social integration, all of us. Briefly, a focus on encouraging meaningful relationships across difference, increasing civic participation and tackling inequality. The part that I'm particularly interested in there is the role seen for volunteering in supporting Londoners to become active citizens, and in particular to reward volunteering amongst young Londoners. So there is also some funding going with this. I think it's well worth a close examination, and I hope perhaps that's one you can bring along to the Commission sometime, Kadira, to tell us what your plans are. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone. You've heard from your, as you said, actually, the existing councillors on the left, and maybe some new ones or representatives of new ones on the right. When I say left and right, I'm not putting any political sign on that, although I'm in my head, but you'll have to come and talk to me afterwards. But thank you all. I just want to finish with an urge that actually there's different political parties, there's different views, there's different ways of engaging, there's different creeds and colours and religions, but we are all in Merton. We do need to work together. And I'm someone who believes passionately that we need to do that as people who live where we live. I can't expect even my local councillors to help me to be friends with my neighbours or the next door but one. I have to do that. Even my local council lives over the road, by the way, but that's not the point. We all have a responsibility in this. So I just want to finish with that. Let's love one another. You're welcome.